In today's video, we have lots to talk about, including some trade talk around Jeremy Swayman. There are some reports suggesting that he may have told the Bruins that if they won't meet his demands, he would prefer a trade. Plus, we're going to talk about the possibility of the Montreal Canadiens going out and finding another top young player after the loss of Patrick Laine. Should they revisit a Trevor Zegras deal, and should they offer one of their top young defensemen? We'll discuss that possibility. Plus, we have lots of updates from training camp, including waivers, more cuts. We have our first waiver claim today as well, and the injuries are piling up in this preseason. We've seen Celebrini, Tkachuk, Shabbat, Stützle, and more all going down. Do they need to make changes, shorten the preseason? We'll discuss that and some more news from the Board of Governors meetings coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to talk about today. Let's get started first with news from the NHL waiver wire and then some roster cuts. We do have our first waiver claim of the preseason. Normally, like I said, the waiver wire starts picking up usually about a week or so into training camp when teams start making cuts. And sometimes you see a few claims, sometimes you don't. Usually the deeper into training camp you go, the more likely there's to be a claim because there's a more interesting player that ends up getting placed on there. And today the Boston Bruins have claimed goaltender Jerard Patera, who was on waivers from the Vancouver Canucks. I mean, Jerard Patera is not, a superstar player by any means, but he will add depth to the Bruins' goaltending position. The main reason and obviously strategy here is the fact that Jeremy Swayman, who we're going to talk about a little bit later in the video, remains unsigned, and they need some more depth at the goaltending position. Like I said, Patera might not be a star goaltender, but he does have some NHL experience, and he might... he can come into camp. He can come in and provide some more competition for Brandon Busey. And they obviously, I think the odds are that he may very well be able to stick on the Bruins NHL roster, at least until they have a Swayman situation sorted out, whatever that's going to end up becoming of it, to play behind Jonas Korpisalo, because obviously they can't just send him to the minors. He has to go back through waivers again, and Vancouver could reclaim him in that scenario. So it's kind of complicated. And if Vancouver reclaims him, they can put him right to the minors, whereas other teams cannot. So we'll see what happens here with Patera. But right now, while they're trying to sort out the goaltending situation with Swayman, they add some more depth with a little bit of experience. I'm kind of surprised in a way that they maybe didn't wait, because there's some more interesting names on the waiver wire today, including Spencer Martin in Carolina, who to me might have been a better option. Obviously, you have to look at contracts and all that, which could play a role in the decision here. But Spencer Martin from Carolina is on waivers. Of course, they have Freddie Anderson, they have Kochetkov, so clearly he was going to be a number 3. And obviously, unless they're going to carry 3 goalies, he's going to need waivers to go down. So Martin's on waivers. Cal Peterson in Philly, I don't suspect he'll get picked up. He's got an unfavorable contract and hasn't played in NHL games in the last few years here. Scott Sabourin's on waivers from San Jose. Pittsburgh has 3 players, including Hollowell, Johnson, and Huntington. The Avalanche have Matthew Phillips, Calle Rosen, and Akan. The Rangers have newly signed youngster Bo Gruhl, who's an RFA with the Ducks and not qualified, who signed a 1-year contract with the Rangers. So Benoit Olivier Gruhl will be going to the minors with the Rangers should he clear, which I suspect he probably will. And Columbus has placed Trafik Spolansky on waivers for purpose of being assigned to the minors. So we'll find out tomorrow. Wouldn't be shocking if a player like Martin is picked up out of all the guys here, or even maybe an option like a Phillips in Colorado. Wouldn't be shocking either, but teams right now are still evaluating. I think the more likely scenarios is goaltending, because obviously teams have fewer of those kicking around. If you see an opportunity to make an upgrade, you're going to want to take advantage of that. Some other names to watch here as well when it comes to some top young players being reassigned. The Utah Hockey Club has reassigned their first ever draft pick and high pick from the 24 NHL draft, Tisha Ginla. Ginla will be reassigned back to the WHL, back to Kelowna. So he had an opportunity to play a preseason game, had a pretty good training camp, good showing, but there's no need to rush Ginla along. He's been sent back to play this year in the WHL. The Chicago Blackhawks have reassigned a couple of their top prospects down to the minors as well. Again, another opportunity for them to get lots of seasoning. They added some more veterans this offseason so that their youngsters are not going to be needing to be rushed to find a roster spot and cover a roster spot. They can take their time and properly develop. So Kevin Korchinski, who saw a fair bit of NHL action last year, and Frank Nazar will both be reporting to the American Hockey League's Rockford franchise to play in the AHL. Now, like I said, the injuries in the preseason are really piling up, and it's really becoming a bit of a problem. The whole point of the preseason is to get, defined, obviously who's going to make your team, to get your systems down, make sure everybody's in shape, which is not an issue. Today's NHL, back once upon a time, it was an opportunity to get in shape, but today's athletes, they're already well in shape, ready to roll long before camp. But, it's about getting ready for the season. It's not about being reckless, and it's not about playing too much and exposing too much, so you're going to run the risk of injuries. But we've seen a lot of them lately. I mean, look at Montreal losing Patrick Laine and David Reinbacher, and then we saw Drew Doughty in Los Angeles go down. All those players are out long term. And then we saw Pittsburgh lose Alex Nedeljkovic. He's out week to week. And then we saw the Ottawa-Montreal game last night was completely ridiculous. And I know it was a little bit on both sides, but we saw Ottawa lose 3 players. I think it sounds like that all 3 are not going to be seriously injured. I know they lost Tkachuk, Stützle, and Shabbat all off the game last night. At this stage of the preseason, though, if a player is even remotely hurt, they're probably going to leave and not come back for precautionary reasons. There's no need to chance anything at this stage, especially for teams like Ottawa who are, they know how important it is to have a good start, and they don't want to go into the beginning of the year completely banged up and jeopardize their season off the get-go. But again, like you saw Arbor Jackeye with what I felt was a dirty hit on Tim Stützle. When you watch the hit, I mean, it's definitely a hockey play, him coming across the blue line to hit the player, and Stützle's holding his stick up high after releasing the puck, and when Arbor hits him, his stick goes right into his face. So the reason that Jackeye is not getting any suspensions or supplemental discipline here is because Stützle's stick is what does most of the damage. But at the same time, he comes into the hit with his elbow up and aimed at the head. And this was one game removed from them losing Patrick Laine and him going after Cedric Power of the Leafs and being frustrated that he wouldn't man up and fight him. And yet when Tkachuk goes after him after the Stützle hit, he kind of did the same thing. So it's kind of, I don't know. To me, it's not a good look. I don't think there's any need of things going that far. Now, I know earlier in the game, I did see about half the game. I missed the first period because I wasn't home. I was actually at the rink here locally, but I know there was some stuff going on between like Ridley Gregg, and I know Ridley Gregg can be, he likes to stir it up, and he can be a pain in the butt. There's no doubt. And I know him and Doc had something going on, but it doesn't matter about all that, in my opinion. Like, it's the preseason. You guys need to figure out how to respect each other out there so that you're not leaving a bunch of injuries this early in the preseason. I mean, that's, a couple of games in a row with Jackeye getting, in pretty serious penalty trouble. And here's the thing, too, with the Jackeye hit on Stützle, regardless if you think it's dirty, not dirty, or what your take is on that, take that out of it for a second here. It was a senseless play to go that far with it. Like, if you want to come across and hit your player, fine, but you got to be careful that you're not targeting the head. And he was given a 5-minute major penalty. They were winning 2-0 at the time. The game completely turned. The Sens scored 3 goals on that major penalty power play and took the game over, and then the Habs lost. Now, thankfully, it's preseason. It doesn't count for jack squat. But if that's regular season, do you want a player? I don't really care that it was a message sending, or it was a case of, some of the Suns players were kind of, upsetting them and stirring things on. Do you really need to put your team in a bad spot? Like, it's not good either way. I wouldn't care who it was too, right? It wouldn't matter if it was the Senators players doing the same thing. I would completely, be upset with that player. Like, I don't think any team should have their players causing trouble. Look at Matt Rempe with the Rangers. I saw a clip of him in his last preseason game where he thankfully he missed, but completely tried to steamroll somebody. I'm like, buddy, it's the preseason. Like, what are you doing? It goes to show, like, all the clips we saw of him in the offseason, what's he doing? He's getting fighting lessons instead of working on his skill and skating and other things. So, I don't know. To me, I just think sometimes the preseason is too long. There's too many injuries. We saw Macklin Celebrini's also hurt, the first overall pick. You want him there on opening night. He's now day-to-day. There's all these players that are in danger of maybe missing opening night. And it's not good for the business of the game. It's not good for all the different teams. And I know that within the Board of Governors talks, there's been some talk apparently about reducing the preseason, but in order for the league to agree to that, they want to extend the regular season. So there's some talk that they will agree to cut the preseason in half. I mean, teams are playing sometimes 7 or 8 preseason games. That's way too much. I honestly think, maybe 3 to 4 tops. And seems like there's a willingness to do that if the players will agree to take the regular season from 82 games to 84. I'm not sure how everybody's going to feel about that. Clearly, the players are going to be playing more regular season games for the same paycheck, so I'm not sure how that's going to go over. I mean, it's a give and take, though. So you get less preseason, you get more regular season. We'll see how that turns out. Obviously, it's not going to change anything for this year, but I do wonder, how that could maybe be a give and take here with the future. Now, that may be something that we see with the next CBA, because Gary Bettman was at the Board of Governor meetings talking about how they really hope to get a jump start on CBA negotiations. Now, the CBA that we have between the NHL and the NHLPA right now doesn't expire until September 2026. Obviously, we're October 2024, so we're just shy of 2 years out. But again, you can start to negotiate ahead of time, and you can see like they did during the COVID era of having an extension put in place, like a memorandum of understanding or whatever you want to call it. You can extend it ahead of time, whatever you want to do. Now, I don't know that the players are going to be that antsy to do too much too far, but the belief here from Bettman is that they want to start negotiations sometime soon, probably by the beginning of the calendar year 2025, with the hopes of having something hammered out by the Stanley Cup final, so that when he does his big press conference when the Stanley Cup final starts, he can announce a new extended CBA. That's Bettman's hope at this point. So we'll see. I know when it comes to expansion, that wasn't discussed at this Board of Governors meeting. It's definitely on their radar, even though they don't really want to talk about it publicly. It's hard to say that it isn't, because it definitely is. It's just not on the radar to the point that they're having documented discussions and are willing to talk about it publicly. There's no doubt they're definitely very, very interested in expansion, and I know from what we've heard that the players definitely would like a piece of that puzzle, and we know that the new NHLPA director, Marty Walsh, has made it clear that he fully intends in the next negotiations to have some of that expansion money go to the players. Now, what percentage it would be, hard to say, but they want something. It's probably not going to be 50-50 or anything like that, but it's definitely going to be something, and I would suspect the players, that's going to be one of the main things that they really strive for, because they know that after the CBA, there may not be more expansion, right? It may not be an issue for long term, so it's hard to say, how long of a stretch of time that's really going to play a role in their negotiations and their agreements here. But at the end of the day, we'll see what happens. I know from the league's perspective, they're saying how stronger than ever. Revenues are at an all-time high. It sounds like the main thing they want is an extended regular season. So I'm not sure what they're going to be a whole lot more give and take. They'll have to maybe agree on some other little tweaks, but it should be theoretically an easier negotiation, just because of the fact that we've had peace for some time. And yes, there are some key points here that are going to be discussed, but it's not such a, I wouldn't think it's such an issue that it could, risk a work stoppage or anything of that nature. So we'll see where things go. But yes, in my opinion, to summarize everything I just had to say there, the preseason is too long. They played too many games. There's been too many injuries. I think players need to respect each other more on the ice, and the league needs to make some changes to cut down on these injuries so teams aren't going into the regular season so banged up. Because let's look across the league, like the number of star players being hurt, it's insane. So we'll see what changes we get. Now, on to some other trade talk around the NHL with the Montreal Canadiens first. Should they revisit a Trevor Zegras trade? Zegras has been a player that's been linked to this team for an extended period of time. And then after they traded for Patrik Laine, who was also linked to the Habs for an extended time, the belief was that they're not going to go after Zegras anymore. They've got their guy, and that they're probably content with their roster the way it is, at least for the short term. Well, now, of course, Patrik Laine is out for at least 2 to 3 months. The Montreal Canadiens find themselves in a position where they were hoping to take a big step forward this year and challenge for playoffs. and now they're down Laine, they're down Reinbacher, and they're at a point where they have a major LTIR pool they can take advantage of. And I know they were talking on BPM Sports and Georges Larac, and I know sometimes some of the things George says is a little bit out there, but this is more just for discussion purposes, because I know to some degree he obviously has connections to the league, but it was just talking hypothetically, would you do this kind of trade? And he thinks they should go after Zegras, and he thinks they should offer Reinbacher. And if you think about Reinbacher now, in a couple of years since being drafted, has had some injuries. His stock has definitely got to be down. I'm not sure at this point what a team like Anaheim and Pat Verbeek, what their take would be on Reinbacher. Clearly, if they feel like they're getting damaged goods, then it might not be something that they're willing to do. But he felt that they should offer Reinbacher and a first. And if they can get Zegras, he thinks that, he says, he asked his partner on the air, like, what if they end up getting another top 5-6 pick again? Like, are you willing to give up that high of a pick and Reinbacher for Zegras? And he's like, well, the rebuttal was he feels if they could get Zegras that they wouldn't be picking that low because they'd be a stronger team, and that the pick might be more like 14-15 range. And if you're willing, he said that he would be willing to give up a pick in the middle of the first round along with Reinbacher for Zegras. So again, I don't know. I mean, you've seen what this blue line has shown so far in the preseason. They do have some interesting young players there. Reinbacher's not the only right shot prospect D that they have coming up. Obviously, they have Mailloux as well. I don't know. At this rate, it's kind of hard to really give up on Reinbacher as early as this is in his career, given how much time that he's going to end up missing by the time he's healthy. And would Pat Verbeek accept damaged goods at this point and an injured player that's going to miss 3/4 of the season? Yes, the future is there, the potential is there, but would the Ducks and Pat Verbeek go for that? And if you're a Habs fan, would you want to see that move? I mean, I guess the other part of the rebuttal here is that if Reinbacher has had enough injuries, is he going to be able to still be the same player and develop into being as strong of a defenseman that you all thought he would when he was drafted? So do you take the option, if you can get a trade for a player of Zegras' quality and caliber now, do you pull the trigger on that deal? Let me know what you think. It's just a talking point to see what everybody thinks down here in the comments. And on Jeremy Swayman. Now, one of the accounts that I follow on Twitter, on X, is kind of an anonymous hockey insider, but they've been right, and they've had some scoops in the past that have been very accurate, and a lot of it has been around the Habs stuff. Like, they're reporting on Laine long before a lot of other more prominent, well-known NHL insiders, and it all turned out to be very accurate. So like I said, I kind of came across this account. At first, I followed it just to see what they were saying. If nothing else, it could be good entertainment. But some of the stuff they were putting out there, a lot of it, and it's not just around Patrik Laine, but they've had a lot of intel around different players, not only about trades, but injuries and different things. And they've actually had some good scoops and accurate information. So they put out some information today suggesting that Jeremy Swayman has let it be known to the Bruins that if they're not going to meet his demands, that he would prefer a trade. Now, we've also got some updates from Elliotte Friedman today, of course, a very prominent, well-known, probably the top hockey insider in the sport. And his podcast he put out today, which didn't expect to get, but came out as a midweek one. He said he had some more information on the contract negotiations, but he says that essentially that Swayman's not going to back down. He didn't say that Swayman had asked for a trade. He hasn't gone that far, but the other day he said that he assumed that Swayman had to be thinking about asking for it. He didn't say that he did. He just said that he's got to be thinking about it after the press conference and Cam Neely called him out and embarrassed him. So Friedman went on to say today about the contract, he believes that the original asking price from Swayman was the Charlie McAvoy contract, 8 years at $9.5 million. We've talked about that before. I think that's been out there enough from enough, well-sourced people in the industry that it's got to have some validity and truth to it. So then he apparently, according to Elliotte, come down closer to 9, probably in that high 8 range. So you're looking at like that. So let's just say 8.9 to 9.1. So he said high 8s, low 9s. So he's come down maybe say $500,000 or so. Okay. So now he's in that range. We know based on Boston's comments in the press conference the other day, 8 times 8 seems to be like they're drawing a line in the sand here, absolute max that they'll go to. We've heard reports that they were offering them, $6.5 million. There's been some contract reports about around 7.6 or 7.7 million that we've seen different terms on. They've never actually offered the 8 times 8 according to his agent. It was a few million short of that over the life of the contract. So clearly he says that Swayman's come down on his asking price, but he does not feel like he's going to accept 8 times 8. He's already come down about $500,000, and that he's going to be holding firm. So right now we've got both sides incredibly dug in. You've got the Boston side who's kind of drawn their line with the Neely comments and an ownership comment saying, we feel that we've got good comparables. We feel like this is fair. This is all we're doing. There's no reason why he shouldn't accept that. And then we've got Swayman's camp saying that's not good enough. We want to reset the goalie market. We feel like the talent and the results are there to justify it. We're digging in too. So we want at 9.5. We've come down a bit. You've come up some, but there's still a big gap. We're not going any lower. So you've got, by the sounds of things, somewhere around $1 million per season gap. That's about between $7.5 to $8 million, depending on the exact amount, over the life of an 8-year contract. So if what Elliott's saying is accurate, that's a big gap. He's not going to leave that much money on the table, and he says he's not backing down. He doesn't see it happening. And then you've got this other anonymous insider saying he wants a trade. He's going to get his money one way or another. So, does Swayman really want out? Only time will tell. Like I said, sometimes I'm reluctant to talk about things depending on who puts it out there, but this account has been accurate before. And they seem to have, like I said, I've kind of built a trust with them over their other scoops. So that's why I thought it'd be interesting to talk about tonight and see what everybody thinks. Now, I've seen some media outlets, I think it was on Daily Faceoff, I think it was the morning show that they do with Johnny Lazarus talking about Swayman maybe going to Chicago. That didn't seem to make sense, though, based on what they're at and all they're going to pay. Like, there's a number of teams that I think would line up to talk about for Swayman. I think you'd be looking at the Avalanche. I think you'd be looking at, you have to think teams like even Toronto would be in the mix. That would be so weird to see Toronto-Boston get a deal done. But, clearly he's the goalie that the Leafs have been missing for a long time. There's a number of teams out there. You're looking at the Avalanche, the Leafs. You could say maybe Detroit would be another team to look at. Looking through the Pacific Division, I know even a team like Pittsburgh, if they could dump Jerry, it would be a great fit there. All of these teams have different cap situations and different assets at their fingertips that they could offer. So I'm not saying that, it would be easy and super fun for each of them to do. The Ducks would be another one, as we talked about before. We mentioned that the other day. Would Anaheim be an option to go for a guy like Zegras? Obviously they'd have to move Gibson, and I don't think Boston would want that. But yeah, there's going to be teams lining up if this is true. If the Bruins have to trade Swayman after trading Allmark, man, what a fumble. What a fumble that is. Maybe they should have gone a different route. Maybe they should have done more negotiating with Swayman ahead of time. And maybe they should have kept Allmark, extended him, and traded Swayman. I understand why it makes so much sense to go the opposite route and to keep Swayman. But right now, things are backfiring hardcore to be able to do that unless they get this worked out. And it's going to have a major impact on this team. So let me know what you think. Is this going to get worked out, or is he going to be traded? And is the rumors about him wanting a trade, is there anything to that, do you think? Or is it too soon? Let me know what you think down in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.